We're going to be going over System Concepts, Article 23, the light that reforms. There are two extreme views that people choose when studying authentic Kabbalah materials. Either they learn it as a body of knowledge, left line, or they ignore the content and use it as a way to attract the light that reforms, right line. Both might feel good. However, they yield no vertical advancement in the spiritual degrees. What is needed, as usual, is a middle line approach, where we use the knowledge of Kabbalah as information of what the Kabbalists attained, so that we can attain the same degrees. We do not learn the structure as the cascading development of our reality, but rather as the cascading development of our perception. We need to use what the Kabbalists wrote as a glimpse of our future. It shows us a higher state of awareness, consciousness, and perception that we can attain if we exert ourselves. The highest desire in a person is envy. Envy allows us to raise ourselves to the level of a higher state. In this world, envy is used for attracting feeling to ourselves. When we see a car of a friend, we want a car just like it. With Kabbalah, it's slightly different, since we do not want to attract external feeling, but rather we want to attract internal power by correcting our perception. This is what we call lights. Lights are any power that we value and want to have. The light that reforms is our future state, the creator within, showing us how to desire and reach it. Lights are not magic or cosmic forces shining on us. They work exactly like advertisements. By reading Kabbalah, either alone or together with a group of people, we long to be in those states described. We want to awaken the quality of envy within us, to attain the perception that the Kabbalists had when they wrote their books. And here's a quote, 155. Therefore we must ask, why then did the Kabbalists obligate each person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Indeed, there is a great thing in it, worthy of being publicized. There is a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah, although they do not understand what they are learning. Through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they are learning, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their souls. And while one has not attained perfection, the lights that are destined to reach him are considered surrounding lights. That means that they stand ready for him, but are waiting for him to purify his vessels of reception, at which time these lights will clothe the able vessels. Hence, even when he does not have the vessels, when he engages in this wisdom, mentioning the names of the lights and the vessels related to his soul, they immediately shine upon him to a certain extent. However, they shine for him without clothing the interior of his soul for lack of able vessels to receive them. Yet the illumination one receives time after time during the engagement draws upon him grace from above, imparting him with abundance of sanctity and purity, which brings him much closer to achieving perfection. From the introduction to the study of the 10 Sefirot from Bala Sulam. If a person waits for the lights, nothing will happen. When we say that the lights do all the work, it is like we are saying that a train takes us to the city. If we wait at home, the train will never come. We need to go to the train station at the right time and board it so it takes us to our destination. Because when we do the preparation, the action is owned by us. This is why we say that we take the train to the city. The same goes with the surrounding lights. While the light reforms us, it is up to us to do the preparation for the process to work. If we desire to reach these future states of consciousness and perception, only then will the surrounding lights actually reform us. When we are involved in activities in the spiritual society, we should use them to increase our desire for correction of our perception of reality. We can also use mundane activities as well to increase our desire for correction. We do this through scrutinies, observations, and discernments we gather from our interactions. Here's a quote, 156. Yet there is a strict condition during the engagement in this wisdom to not materialize the matters with imaginary and corporal issues. This is because thus they breach, thou shalt not make unto thee a graven image nor any manner of likeness. In that event, one is rather harmed instead of receiving benefit. From the introduction to the study of the 10 Sefirot by Bala Sulam. It is important not to think or imagine that we have already reached these states before we have, otherwise no correction will happen. This is This is because we pull our future state to the dust, which means to remove the required importance. We basically destroy any desire in us to advance. If we physicalize our perception, we muddle what the Kabbalists are trying to convey to us. This is why there is a strict condition to not materialize these matters. We think that Kabbalah will change the world around us with no correction required in our perception. The only way the world will become better is if we change our perception through the studying of Kabbalah material. The perception changes increase our internal power, which will manifest externally in the world around us. This is what we need to gain control over our lives and bring ourselves to a self-realization of our true nature, the nature of the Creator. Here's the first workshop question. What preparation do we have to do to attract our future state? Cedric.
I don't know, perhaps working on our Kabbalah materials and trying to understand beyond the words what they mean to in this case to me individually, because I don't think that at the state that I am at right now, those words would mean the same for others.
Maria.
I think aside from discernment, making sure that we are always with the constant importance, as if instead of pressing the brake and feeling that I have attained something, to always continue with the accelerator, so I can always be looking ahead at the next future state.
Moshe.
I would say just to never be content with what you have, what you've attained. It doesn't really matter. It's always about continually moving forward to a higher degree and basically investing yourself in the group, obviously, and constantly making discernments and sharing discernments, of course, and always trying to reach another degree.
Robin.
Yes, you have to desire it. You have to be aware of it. You have to read Kabbalistic texts. You have to be in a group. And biggest of all, not imagine or think that you're in a higher state or any of that. You have to be receptive and be looking for your future state.
Andy writes, first we should desire this deeply, then clean all our concepts. And Caesar said, we have to work with the friends that aim for the same goal and learning from them how to reach that state. There's basically 4 different categories of people that we deal with, which is humanity, the spiritual society, the group, and the individuals. And the idea is to collect discernments on how their behavior, if we want to become the creator, we need to learn how he manipulates us, how he works in us from the actions we know you. And by slowly cleaning our dirty concepts and maturing our concepts, that's how we can actually advance. The second question. How do we avoid plateauing on the path? Cedric.
Actually, I don't know, and I think that I've been here for a while, and I don't know at this point yet.
Maria.
I think one way of not plateauing is to constantly be asking and assessing whether am I plateauing or am I advancing, and being concerned for that. And I was going to mention one more thing. To be very aware or be on the lookout when I feel that fear. because it's, and I notice it more when it's things that pain me personally, with me, with my point of reference. So be perceptive of when that fear comes in and how I'm going to use it, because that could determine whether I kind of shut down or say, oh, I recognize this now and I know how to use it. So recognizing when one is fearing something, and then also always questioning, am I plateauing? Am I advanced?
Moshe.
I would say, I couldn't agree more with Maria. I mean, it's really about fear. And that is fear of the creator. That is fear of plateauing and not advancing. And it's not really about fear of anything corporal or any kind of pain or anything like that. It's just a real fear of not advancing. And that is the most important thing there is, of reaching complete adhesion with the creator.
Robin.
I couldn't agree more. Plus, a couple things I've learned from in here, I think Moshe, is if you're in ascent, don't peek out, just accept it. And if you're in a descent, don't start trying to figure it out, but just accept it. And also when you're not feeling any movement at all, or maybe in a descent, ask yourself, I ask myself, why don't I want to advance? Why don't I want to advance? And that seems to kick things up and get moving again too.
Our biggest problem is that we think that we want to actually advance. But the idea is that we don't actually want to advance, and you constantly need the environment to basically, as I said, clean our concepts so that we don't have that fear, that we're not scared. And that can only be done by the environment, because we definitely do not have a desire in ourselves to actually do it on ourselves, to basically do surgery on our concepts and surgery on our perception. We need an environment to do that for us. And it's all about integrating our desire into the environment and giving permission to the environment to clean our concepts. Third question. Why is it important to do group work on Kabbalah materials? Cedric.
In my case, it has helped me to grasp better the concepts and to find a way to advance, because I find answers that at some point I don't have.
Maria.
Yes, and because I don't have it, and I have, all I can start with are dirty concepts, I need the group to have a place where my point of reference can be heard, and then the concept can hopefully get cleaned. Everyone can help each other clean the concept.
Moshe.
I would say to always widen your perception, because when you hear others speak and investing in the group, it just widens your perception. You see different contrasts and things you've never seen before. And that's kind of why a group is necessary. It gives you just a bigger picture.
Robin.
I agree. Without coming into the group and hearing others and expressing yourself, you just can't see everything. You can't feel other things that people feel and see and understand. It's impossible without the group.
Andy writes, the desire comes through the group. There's two parts with working in the group. There's working in the group with people that agree with you, and then what that can do is give you more of that confidence, intensify your current beliefs, and so forth. And then you've got the other part of the group is actually with people that don't agree with you. They have the opposite thoughts. And then what that does is you have to now, inside your perception, have space for both your thought and the opposite thought. And what that does is it expands you. That's what it calls to expand your vessel, to have those opposites, those dichotomies. And by adding more and more of those dichotomies within you and accepting them, not having them struggle with each other, but actually having acceptance, just like just like in a vessel where you've got one side is the opposite of the other, to really expand it to get it to the size that you need it to be. So, what do you think of the article?
I love that concept of expanding those dichotomies, expanding those. It's basically expanding those edges and just those both sides. It's, you know.
Yes. The reason I wrote this article in the first place was because many times in the society, especially in PV, we constantly hear this concept of that the light will reform us. And while it is true, the problem is that we think, oh, if the light's going to reform us, I don't have to do anything. Or I just have to do physical actions, and somehow a light will come from somewhere and reform me. And the problem with that is we physicalize the concept, just like it said in the article, and then we don't get anything. So every time we hear that the light reforms, we always have to constantly understand that we have to do something for it to reform us. And if we don't, we're not going to get anything. Like the light that reforms is not some magical light somewhere as if the Creator is outside of us. The Creator is within us. He controls us. We have to be aware of how He controls us and want and desire and aspire to be on His level, to be on His degree, to be in that maturity. As it says, the Creator is good and does good. That means the Creator is mature. It's a mature perception, a state of mature perception, and does good. It can help others mature their perception as well. So it's very important to not think of the light as something outside of us, rather it's an internal state, it's a future state that I want to abide by, to actually reach and feel and perceive, instead of just it's staying dormant in my subconscious.
It gives me a sense that things are not just to happen by themselves, and there's work that each of us has to do, and no matter how small it is, it will have a benefit after we do something instead of just not doing anything. So I think this is valuable because I might not get everything that I have been reading along these years, but somehow I think I'm making progress because I have the intention to do something about it, not just be, not just staying without doing nothing.
One of the conflicts that happen in the society is you basically get two kinds of extremes. You either get the people that think, oh, it's all about the knowledge and we have to learn the books and just really like amass all the knowledge within us and really understand all the intricacies of the knowledge. And then you've got the opposite extreme group where they're like, oh, it doesn't really matter what you understand or not. It's all about just the kumbaya love and sort of connection, general connection between each other, and that will make the light reforms. And the problem is that both groups basically fail because it's a combination between them. It's basically advancement. Advancement is that middle line where you're combining the knowledge of the books. They didn't write those books for nothing, just for a light to reform. There's content there which it talks exactly about our advancement. We talk about it in the TS sessions where we relate to it as steps that we go through in our future, on ourselves, in our perception. And the idea is to take the knowledge and invest it in the environment and make it a discussion, a conversation with the environment. And then you actually have something to do connection with each other. If you're just doing kumbaya or just, especially in a virtual group, it's even harder because at least in the past with physical groups, they were able to do it through, like we read in letter 37 of Rabash, they were able to do it through meals and wine. But with a virtual group, you can't even do meals. So it's like, well, then what can you do? Well, clean concepts. That is why there's a very vast amount of material to really give you different tastes and concepts to work with a group and talk about it and converse and really expand your understanding of how the Creator operates on us. And the more and more you internalize those concepts, the more and more you'll reach that adhesion.
So you're saying basically the whole meals, and joyfulness and sort of being just having fun. That's just for the ego part. You still need that ego part. You still need to enjoy the ego part of it, that feeling part of it, while you're advancing. I think you need a combination of both. No?
Well, the idea is that what the meals does is it's not just to make the ego enjoy. It's rather there's an advantage of physical people being in the same location. There is an effect that they have on each other subconsciously just by being in the same physical location. And that's why it says don't be in a congregation of fools or people who just basically don't want to advance because they'll affect you even if they don't say a word to you. Virtually, of course, that doesn't apply. And so then it just becomes a moot point of you just can't use virtual meals to actually cause that general connection. So you're basically left with hardly anything apart from just, looking at it and being inspired about it. You can have the external inspiration, but there's no internal inspiration. For the internal inspiration to happen on a virtual group, it basically has to be done through clean concepts to reach any kind of actual advancement. It is, remember that at Bala Salam Rabash, there was no internet. There was no concept of a virtual group. This is a very new, basically, in the last 15 years concept of having a virtual group. So you could definitely see that need to move to a higher stage, just like it said in that letter 37 of Rabash, where you have to step it up to basically start treating the friends with a lot of more seriousness and actually listen to what they're saying in the workshop and not just be like, oh, I don't actually care what they say. It's just about the connection. It's like, yeah, it is about the connection, but there has to be substance in that connection. There needs to be details. That's what we say, that the devil's in the details. The ego is the details. And you have to inject your ego into that connection. And then that creates that middle line. And if you just have either the ego or just the connection, you're basically not going to reach anything. You might feel that you're doing a lot of stuff, but you're not advancing spiritually at all. You're not advancing vertically. You're only advancing horizontally, which means you're getting more experience in the degree you are in. We're not actually moving to a higher degree of perception.
You said something, and it caused a little bit of an alarm. It's written not to be in a group of those not desiring to attain. When I think of phase 2 and the focus on instead of attaining adhesion, well, I don't know. The thought is that they're to attain adhesion, but the focus is unity. And although unity is important in working with an individual or a group such as this to clean concepts, the direction and the focus is different. Isn't there a detriment to spending time in that environment? It's not saying that we shouldn't, but we know it's important that we continually discern when we're in that environment, to work within ourselves to clean what we're hearing and sensing. But it takes strength to continue to do that. So that's my thought. Is it a detriment depending on the group because their focus is possibly not directed correctly?
So the idea is that you're right, that when you're in a group of people that are not, you could say, aligned to actually reaching adhesion, but think they might be, but then they just want corporal unity between people, which is not the goal. When we at the beginning when we're in phase 2, we're not really aware. We have those dirty concepts just like everybody else. So it doesn't really matter. When we actually arrive to phase 3, and then suddenly we actually start to get some clean concepts of what is the goal and have focus on it, then our question arises, what do we do with phase 2? Like, you no longer agree with what they're doing, so what, you're just meant to leave them? And the answer is no. What you're meant to do is actually go to phase 2, but use them in a different way. If you're using them beforehand because you had similarity, you could say, a form between you and the others, now you don't have, sorry, you lost me for a second. Am I back?
Yes.
Where did I finish?
I didn't notice that there was a lag, so I thought you were still speaking.
But it's back on. What is basically saying that when you go back into phase 2, now you have to relate them in a different way. So the idea is to go back, but not use them as filling, not use them as a place to feel good with yourself, but rather you go to phase 2 to feel deficiencies. You actually go to phase 2 to not feel good with yourself. You go to phase 2 to get dirty concepts. You go to phase 2 to get frustrated, get those dichotomies, and then get those dirty clothes, you could say. And then you come to phase 3 and clean them. Because the problem is, if you just come to just phase 3, if you just have phase 1 and phase 3, you have no deficiencies. And then you can't advance because you're coming to, let's say, system concepts. You're hearing all these clean concepts, but you don't have a lack for them. You don't need them. So what happens is they just go over your head, and you just feel like, oh, it's just being repetitive. So what you need is that phase 2 in that middle, like in that sandwich between phase 1 and phase 3, to actually give you those deficiencies of why do you need clean concepts? That clean concepts aren't readily available everywhere, and that you constantly have to reaffirm them. And phase 2 gives you that feeling of, whoa, I have some dirty concepts that then I can go with that desire to phase 3 and actually get them clean. But if I'm not in a phase 2 spiritual society, then what will happen is, why do I even need the group? Why do I even need the clean concepts if I've got no dirty concepts? So the idea is that the phase 2 is designed for deficiencies. And if we look at the 4 phases of direct light, the whole idea of phase 2 is it has no vitality. It doesn't have the light of wisdom. It only has the light of mercy, which means it's not about vitality. It's all about feeling that deficiency, feeling that lack. And when that lack is implemented, then you've got phase 3 of the 4 phases of direct light, where you're starting to add a bit more ego. It's like more of an internal ego. You basically want internal power. But if you don't have that phase 2 deficiency, you're not going to want internal power. So the idea is to go to phase 2, suffer, you could say, in order to actually advance. To basically use the phases as they were intended. Phase 2 is never actually designed to fulfill you, and that's why the highest what phase 2 can do for you is just give you a good, let's say, feeling. Let's say you're in a workshop, you feel great, but then you leave the workshop, you go out, you go into the normal world, you're back to square one. You have to restart it all again. But the idea is in phase 3, by cleaning concepts, that actually gives you a foothold, a standing, even in phase 1. It affects the way you deal with day-to-day business, to day-to-day handlings with family and business and people that phase 2 doesn't give you. Phase 2 might make you feel like you know why you're living your life, but it's basically why you're still suffering. But we don't need to know why we're suffering. We need to actually stop the suffering. And that's what phase 3 actually tries to move towards, actually, by cleaning the concepts. So you could basically say that phase 1 is life, phase 2 is the meaning of life, and then phase 3 and above is the power of life. I think the article is actually quite self-explanatory. I think stop here and enter the after party.